You know that kid who says, I don't like fantasy, and then reads an entire series about talking dragons and secret portals? That's because fantasy isn't a flavor. It's a whole darn menu. I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Reads, and today we're tackling the genre that throws out the laws of physics, but still insists on structure. That's right. Fantasy. And no, it's not just make it magical and hope for the best. If the magic can fix everything, it's not fantasy. That's a cheat code. And kids can smell that. Fantasy breaks the rules of our world, and on purpose. It says, what if animals could talk? What if the broomstick flew? What if your reflection in the mirror had opinions? But here's the trick. Once you break reality, you have to rebuild it, and you have to rebuild it with care. The world, it has to make sense to itself. The magic, it needs limits. It needs logic. It needs consequences. Otherwise, there's no stakes. And if there are no stakes, nobody cares. Middle grade fantasy is not about escaping real problems. It's about facing them with a wand in your hand and a griffin at your side because, honestly, growing up is already weird enough. And the magic just makes that louder. So yes, kids read fantasy for the magic, but they stay for the metaphor. These books aren't about spells. They're about power and identity and fighting for the world you want to live in. That prophecy, it's about pressure. That quest, it's grief, but wrapped in a dragon. That magical object, it's responsibility in a glittery wrapper. Fantasy isn't fluff. It's emotional truth in disguise. So let's talk magic. For real. Because if the magic in a book solves every problem, instant DNF. Boring. But if the magic in a book creates problems, now we're talking. The best fantasy has systems, rules, and maybe even taxes. Magic that costs something, that pushes characters into hard choices, that reveals who they are instead of rescuing them. It's not abracadabra and everything's fine. It's, you have this power. Now, what do you do with it? Now, we also have to talk about world building, and specifically world building that doesn't suck. Because fantasy gives authors permission to build entire worlds from scratch. But here's the secret. The best worlds don't feel new. They feel lived in. A good fantasy world has history, even if we don't get all of it. Culture, and that's more than just medieval British cosplay. Logic, yes, even with the flying unicorns, as well as rules. Because chaos is only fun when it's happening to someone else. But fantasy doesn't just do one thing. It shapeshifts. So let's go through a speed round of the subgenres you'll see out in the wild. You'll see epic fantasy. Now, these are the kinds with maps, kingdoms, and a lot of walking. Someone's probably wearing a cloak. There's also contemporary fantasy, where magic leaks into the real world. Think about lockers and spellbooks coexisting. There's also magical school stories. It's not just about learning spells, it's about finding your people and avoiding cursed hall passes. And let's not forget fairy tale retellings. What if Cinderella had a sword? What if Goldilocks broke in on purpose? And there's also some mythology-based fantasy. Old gods, new problems. Half-bloods, monsters, legacy drama, animal fantasy. Societies of talking animals navigating real problems. Bonus if somebody's a rabbit general. Also, toy or object fantasy, when inanimate things get inner lives. And feelings. And existential dread. Whatever path kids take into fantasy, it counts. It's all scaffolding for metaphor, for meaning, for transformation. The magic is just how we get there. So what makes fantasy good and not just shiny? Now, if you're reading a fantasy novel and you can predict every move, that's not good fantasy. That's a well-executed PowerPoint. But the good ones surprise you, but in ways that feel inevitable. They give you magic, but you have to earn it. They hand you a sword and then ask what kind of person you'll be when you use it. It's not about what happens, it's about why it matters. Fantasy let kids step outside their lives just far enough to finally look at them. It gives them power and then says, here, you're gonna need this. And for you, as a future teacher, this is one of the genres where students most often get hooked on reading. It's emotionally intense, narratively rich, and when well done, absolutely unforgettable. Don't dismiss it as escapism. Kids aren't running away from reality. They're training for it. With dragons. So yeah, fantasy breaks the rules, but it also follows them too. And when it's done right, it's not just a story. It's a mirror, a map, a survival guide in disguise. Next up, we're heading into science fiction, where the questions get colder, harder, and way more robotic. I'll see you in the next one.